Dale Schaefer.
Good morning, everybody, and those on the East Coast, good afternoon. My story is about psychedelics. It comes out of Law 360. The headline is Massachusetts Attorney General certifies 2 psychedelics legalization efforts. Now, I grabbed this because I've been watching this for some time now as Colorado and Oregon rolled this out. California just today got a Senate bill to decriminalize psychedelics similar to this through the Assembly. So we're going to see more of this roll out. And Massachusetts has kind of a weird system here. You qualify for an initiative for the ballot, and the legislature gets a chance to bring the legislation forward and do it on their own. If not, you get some more signatures and you go on the ballot for the initiative passed by the voters. So this is the first step. The legislature is now going to have a chance to take a look at this, but it has some qualities to it that I've been following for a minute. First of all, it talks about facilities where you get this, okay? Well, I don't know how we're going to define that and how we certify this, but they're using the term facilities rather than a retail store or whatever. You go to some facility, they're going to have facilitators there, whatever that means. And we don't have a definition yet. Who's going to be qualified to take you through a journey with mushrooms? I don't know. I don't know that makes a big difference because people do it all day anyway. But try to legitimize it, if you will, in the eyes of medicine is going to be a struggle. These also have competing clauses. One of them doesn't allow for home grow, one of them does. It allows you to share. It's got some pretty tight limits on natural hallucinogens. You don't get acid, you don't get peyote, but you get DMT, psilocybin, psilocin, and you get mescaline. Okay. Now, it also builds in some protection for parents. We just brought this up. It puts in the language here that you can't interfere with parental rights unless you have a finding that drug use is interfering with or produces an unreasonable risk to the minor. I don't know that's going to make a lot of difference because we just discussed if you're at that rung of the ladder, you're going to get jerked up, drug in. You don't have the ability to defend yourself, and you're going to be fighting this like we do with weed. The bigger point here is that they're moving forward at what I would consider light speed. I mean, I've been involved in this since 215 days here in California, and it took years to get anything done. And with psychedelics, we're moving at light speed here. And I think a lot of it has to do with the recognition that people like me who are vets with PTSD, is that we're watching 21 plus vets a day kill themselves. And it's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? If somebody doesn't step up, we're going to continue to watch this. You promised us and we signed up to go to war for you, son of a bitches. You're going to take care of us. And here we are once again, going through the muck and mire here of trying to change this from being something that's amoral to let's treat it like it was for millennium, part of society, for stress relief, for depression, for good mental health. Okay, so we'll continue to talk about these initiatives that come forward. California, as I said, going to move one forward too, and see if we can find out how it actually works in the ground, because we're still 1 to 2 years out before any of this stuff takes effect. And in the meantime, how do we license this? How do we wrap our hands around it so that the government will approve it? In the meantime, letting people do this without fear of having their lives ripped apart and going to prison. That's my story for the morning. Back at you. What do you guys all got to say?
Massachusetts, man, they're moving forward on this fast, Dale.
Yeah.
Man.
It looks like it. But see, that's a good thing. And if I have a prediction that we're going to have psychedelics competing with weed for legalization at the federal level as it rolls out across the states. So let's just watch. There's a lot of mistakes we've all seen and we've talked about of what happens when you actually do this and you avoid the internal biases and the mistreatment you see from a system that is moralized drug use. And, you know, we're going to have to tether this out. But I think this is a wonderful sight to see as we move forward here to give some relief for people for natural depression and anxiety relief.
Yeah, psychedelics is going to totally leapfrog the cannabis movement because it's not directly tied to or on Front Street tied to the war on drugs or to offering people licenses.
I think it's gonna
of color.
I think it more has to do with the fact that it's easier for the pharmaceutical industry to be able to compound these different compounds in single in single compounds, as opposed to where cannabis is a whole host of different compounds, and they can't isolate them all individually. It's much harder for them, and so therefore mushrooms are going to be fast tracked in that way, because pharmaceutical can get the monopoly on them that much faster.
I mean, the monopoly's already there.
And if you listen to a lot of the like liberal elites and whatnot that go to a lot of these MAP conventions and these different psychedelic conventions across the country, a lot of what they're advocating for is for like therapy induced control, where you're in a controlled environment, and then that's the only way where these psychedelics are actually so-called legal.
They could have done the same thing with
crazy.
weed.
Right, Dale? It's batshit crazy, and these people just want to control it, and have the psychedelic or have the pharmaceutical and the mental health industry control psychedelics, when in reality it's a plant-based medicine, and people should be able to control themselves and dose themselves with these types of medicines just over the counter.
Well, exactly.
100%, Jason.
And
They could have done the same thing with weed, and they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
trap market is going to figure this out before the government does. I mean, that's how it's going to work, because all the people I know who are actually using psychedelics right now for therapeutic reasons, they're not waiting for the government to do shit. We're all moving forward on this. I represent too many vets that are just whacked out from PTSD from wars, and this helps. So if you've got those kind of people, I drag them to meetings. You want to find out what's going on. We put our life in the line for you, son of a bitches, and you're going to drag your feet. No, we're going to do it ourselves, and we'll let you know. That creates the tension that we don't want to see here, but it's the reality. If the government's going to drag its feet, fuck them. We're going to do it ourselves, and then you guys are going to continue to come after us for stupid shit, but we're going to continue to look out for our mental health. These are existential problems for the people I take care of, because they're killing themselves every day.
Yep.
And if we can give them some relief, then that's my goal.
Well said.
What's that, Tony? I think you're on mute.
Well, I hear him.
Go ahead. What I'm gonna say is the reason why this is a win is because for marijuana, you can smell it when it's growing. You can smell it when you're smoking it. But when you have some shrooms, you don't smell them when they're growing.
You don't smell them when you take them.
Yeah, you don't smell them when they take them.
It's not offensive to
It's
nobody.
not offensive to anyone else. And there's people who are literally tripping all around you and having great productive days. So I don't really see the downfall to this. I see this really going up.
And it goes like what you and Rico both said. You guys, you and Jason and Rico, you both made the same good points on the same roads. Like it's hard for them to
quantify
rate marijuana because it has so many compounds, but it's also marijuana has a negative connotation when you think about it. You're like, oh shit, weed. It's just bad. It leaves that bad thought. And most of the older people's, you past 65, this is a bad thing to you. You're like, oh my God, you're a devil worshiper or something. So
reefer madness worked. The bullshit propaganda for
you see the poster? No, they don't see the poster in the back.
1920s, 1930s, it worked.
They know.
Yes.
Right.
We actually put a poster on the wall from the 1930s from Reefer Madness. It's crazy you said it because it's actually we got a poster and put it on the wall.
See,
That's dope. So that's the reason.
When you think of psychedelics, you think of like trippy cartoons and stuff like that. And people like high pitched music and all that other psychedelic stuff. When you think of weed, you think.
Right, when you think of psychedelics, it's like baseball and rock and roll.
That's right.
Mushrooms go like it's like baseball and rock and roll. When you think of weed, you think of criminals.
You always think about like the demonization of weed dealers. You never think of the demonization of the psychedelic dealers.
Right. You never see that in American culture.
Exactly.
No. Right. If you look at
propaganda has long legs on it.
I've never ordered a pizza with weed on it, but I have ordered plenty of pizzas with mushrooms on it. Just saying. That's the whole stigma right there. You have any thoughts on this, Rochelle? Any fun psychedelic info?
I think that everyone's right in that this is definitely going to leapfrog cannabis. It already is. It's happening extremely quickly. All of the research being done, the clinical studies that are coming out, it's far outpacing cannabis. The investments are still looking fairly good in psychedelics, although they are starting to dwindle. But it's not as much of a bubble burst as it was in cannabis, several years ago. And I do think that we will see regulated psychedelics in a lot of ways before we see regulated cannabis. Now, given the fact that we may be seeing a Schedule 3 switch, that could kind of change that theory, but for the longest time, I have believed that psychedelics are for sure happening faster than cannabis because, to the earlier point, there's not as much of the association with the war on drugs. It's coming down far more as a healthcare, clinical sort of approach as opposed to a recreational adult use versus medical approach. There's not that divide there.
Mm-hmm.